Я хочу передати слово, і я переключусь на англійську мову. And I want to switch in English and just to give a word to our guest from Norwich, Rаймонд Квек. I think he will introduce himself better. And and please, first lecture, it's Rаймонд.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really honored to be here and happy to be here to share some ideas and to make some new friends. But first of all, I'd like to thank Xenia and Oleg for inviting me. Many years ago, I connected with Oleg when I was head at De Montfort University's Leicester School of Architecture. We tried to have a connection, but it didn't happen for various reasons, so we managed to keep in touch. But I always am a very strange person. I have an Oriental background. People wonder why I speak the way I do and speak with very strange ideas. But this is me. I was born in Singapore. I don't love the country. I don't love the island. It's a very strange. I ran away. I lived in the UK. I've been educated in Liverpool, University of Cambridge, and also at the AA. I did have a practice. I taught around the world. And I'm a registered architect, I'm an architectural historian, I'm published, and I'm an educator. I've been in higher education for about almost 25 to almost 30 years, actually. This background is just so that you know where I'm coming from. I don't think it's possible to talk about architectural education as naively or simply with the title that I gave. It's actually much more complex, and these are the things I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be looking a bit of the history of where we come from and what it contributes to us, because these are enduring things. They still are out there, and these are things that exist in almost every aspect of architecture education all around the world that I have seen. Some of which may apply here, some of which may not apply, but I think it's useful to be cognizant of these facts. I think it's very easy to just kind of build up a curriculum and run a school and not be aware of all these problems. So I think the beginning of it all is, what is architectural knowledge? Because we purport to teach this, but we also teach the skill. But we always say, I built this, but architects actually don't. They don't build. They don't get their hands dirty. What do? They design. Where does this notion come from? What do we do in design? This connection between I, mine, and hen. I'm going to skip through many slides very quickly, okay? And we can talk about the detail later. And I'm a scholar of all this kind of nonsense, and I'm going to give you a connection to this paper which I have written. So you can Google it online, you can download it and read it. It's about design. Where does it come from? And I'm being very fascinated about this notion of origins and creation. Because, in our world, we say we design, but the notion is actually quite complicated. In Italy, we say sono architetto, sono disegno. It's a multivalent word. It means two things. It means I draw, but it also means I plan. In English, the words change. And where does this change come from? It's interesting to know. Also, the way we have organized information has never really been understood in where we fit in. Architecture has never been a form of knowledge. Properly. Schools of architecture have been around 300-400 years. The profession itself maybe 200-300 years. But before, they used to have the trivium, which was grammar, rhetoric, and dialectic. And then the quadrivium a bit later. Architecture was part of armatura, making weapons. It was a low-grade skill. It was never part of the higher arts. It was only in the Renaissance when they tried to introduce formal academies. Right? They tried to introduce formal academies. They tried to raise the level of design education, not just architecture, design education. Okay? And it started from the workshops, and they began with the architectural treatises and so forth. And of course, we know the very famous Treatise of Vitruvius, right? And this is the very first line from Vitruvius. The opening of the book, the first line, he says, "The knowledge of the architect depends upon many disciplines and various apprenticeships which are carried out in the other arts." If you dig up the papers that I have online, another one I've written about is architectural knowledge. There are a few papers on that online. And one of the things I argue about is, around one architect, there's always about 20 people dancing around that person who's more expert at that field than the architect is, like the structural engineer, mechanical engineer, landscape architect, whatever. There are many people who have many skills. And the architect is almost the person in the middle. So it's an interesting way to understand where our formal knowledge comes from, because we don't really know how to define it. The first clue is the organization in the Renaissance of the first few schools of design. This is one that Leonardo da Vinci tried to do. But it came from the guilds. The artists were really worried about who would bury them. So they started to form their own guilds, and they tried to raise the level of design knowledge and design academies. So they started the first few schools. You know, this is an illustration of one of them. The most famous one is the Accademia del Disegno in Florence, started by Giorgio Vasari. And his enemy, Cellini, designed this seal, and you can see he put the alphabet with the tools, and he tried to marry the two together. And one other clue here is this seal was never used because Vasari and Cellini were enemies. They hated each other. It's an important thing. I'll mention this hatred. This jealousy is part of our culture as designers, and we need to know that. Another time I can go into the detail of disegno, which is a fine young gentleman. Of course, it comes with judgment. You can read this online. This is the fulcrum point. This is a sonnet by Michelangelo. And in 1550, he was the most celebrated artist, architect, painter, sculptor, right? And he talks about this. Varchi talks about this. Everybody was talking about the comparison between the arts. But what was really important at the time was the formation of disegno as the father or mother art, right? And this is the famous ceiling painting by Federico Zucchero. This is in Rome. And this shows Father Disegno surrounded by his three daughters, painting, sculpture, and architecture. Vasari talked about it. Everybody tried to talk about it. And it was really about this tripartite relationship of the arts. They formalized the academy. This is where we come from, right? And this is Michelangelo's gravestone. You can see the three rings, painting, sculpture, and architecture. Why? Because he was the best at it all. He celebrated his genius. Genius is another interesting word. Here, he's teaching everybody. This is, of course, Zucchero's cartoon. There was a painting of this. Michelangelo conducting a lesson in anatomy, drawing the anatomy. Another interesting thing here, they changed the curriculum in the academy to introduce live drawing, not just live drawing, but cut up bodies, because the Pope allowed them to cut up the body. So they changed the curriculum, and the curriculum became very flexible. It's also another interesting idea that we still have. We are flexible in our curriculum. Zucchero also talked about disegno as a concept and a manifestation. We still struggle with this. Now, this is the interesting bit, right? When all those ideas from Italy went to England, we have the beginnings of the modern problem. We have painting, sculpture, architecture. It was translated in around 1600, 1608. Painting is translated as painting, the skill, like you paint a wall. Sculpture is translated to the technique of carving. Architecture is translated to building. And I think we still struggle from this problem. I have very little respect for Norman Foster. I don't think of him much as an architect. I think he's a great builder. He just makes office buildings that are dressed up. Not very, very skillful. But we still struggle with this problem. And the academy still struggles with this problem. British schools are obsessed with building, not so much architecture. Building. Big problem. Now, we fast forward to the 20th century. The Bauhaus introduces also a unity of the arts. But they introduce this new concept, which goes through the whole of the 18th century. I don't have the time to go through the history of the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. But by this time, disegno has changed. This is the manifesto from the Bauhaus. Disegno has changed, and they introduce a new concept of disegno industriale, which is industrial design, production. It changes everything, because the concept itself has now become, a manifestation and conception, but also production. Now, if we talk about architectural education proper, there are three things that we have to deal with. The form of knowledge and how we organize it, the systems of how we organize the education, and then the profession. That connection in many countries is very loose, particularly in Britain. It's become very, very tenuous. In Australia, it's also become a bit of a problem, because in Australia, in order to teach a master's degree, you must have a PhD. In order to teach a BA, you must have a master's. You must have one degree higher. What the people don't understand is that PhD is not necessarily make you a good design teacher. It makes you a good researcher. And it becomes a bit of a problem because now the whole of the academy is flooded with people with PhDs who have never practiced. They've never been in the profession. It's a complex problem. So we look at this. Now this is, I don't know if you are familiar with, the name escapes me, but there's a world system of comparing architecture education, and this is, the name will come to me, a system of 5-year education, roughly, yeah? 5-year education. Now, in Britain, we've had this for the longest time, a break in 3 years, and then the 2 years, and then the professional practice. In America also, there is this, I think there are probably about 12 schools now. They have a straight pathway. You can finish and become a professional registered architect in 7 years, right? The average amount of time it takes for somebody to qualify as an architect in the UK is 9.75 years. 9.75 years. I just spoke to some friends in Florida. They told me it's 12.5 years in Florida. And Florida just graduated the first 3 people who started from year 1 to year 7 straight. I think 3 graduates last year. So there's this notion of you know, the length of the time of education, the ability of the architect. You know, it's strange. If you break your leg and you end up in A&E in the hospital, you'll probably be seen by a houseman who just finished 5 years of medical school. But nobody will trust you with a commission if you finish 5 years of architecture education. It's very rare. Even your own mother won't trust you with a building. You know, it's very, very rare. But it's a problem because we are spending a lot of time in education. The pay is very low. It's a problem. We still are there. Now, also, some of the issues that are happening because of the breakup, we are finding that many of these graduates at this level are almost as good as graduates at this level. And it's a different kind of issue which I will address a bit later. We see this jurisdictional thing in Australia, similar programs in America and so forth, right? Now, there are many routes in which we can create an architectural education, but let's look at some of the kind of issues that go on. We're now, basically all schools educate for the world. It was a very long time ago where we, you know, graduate from the city and then you work in the city. Now, we have students who work all over. This is a former student of mine from Leicester. 3 years after her first degree, her first job is with this fellow, Shigeru Ban, in Tokyo. She just went there. He didn't pay her, which is another problem. He didn't pay her at all, but she wanted to work with him. And she did. Stay with him for about 6 months and work with him because she wanted to have Shigeru Ban on her CV, right? But that's how it is. The students go where the work is. So we no longer educate for our immediate vicinity, we educate for the world. So some of the issues that you're dealing with are these aspirations of these changes in architecture education, the core values versus transferable skills, which I will speak about some detail in a bit, and the reassessment of the value of architecture education. And the biggest problem we have in the UK, and I think to some extent my experience in Australia and New Zealand the same, is what I call the correlation of expectations. We get people who start architecture school in year 1. Every year, year 1, we will lose about 15%. They don't leave the university, they go and do a different course. They do business, law, or something, because design is not for them. Because they don't know that it is not for them. And it's a wastage, it's a huge wastage. Also, we have been training people with a monothematic way of thinking that you can only do one thing. When I was a student, you had 2 pathways. You were going to be a successful architect or a failed draftsman. There were 2 things that you could do. Now it's a different world, and we will see how it is different. So the value of an architecture education today, we need to reassess. We need to assess this, we need to assess opportunities and vulnerability. I'll just move very quickly on. A few years ago, there was a study done by the RIBA about the future proofing of education, but more specifically, the future proofing of the profession. And they came up with some conclusions of how the market will change. Yesterday, I spoke with Eric, and we talked about the gig economy. This is what they predicted. This is what's going to come. What is the gig economy? You're not going to have a long-term career. You're going to have small parcels of jobs. And this is what they're predicting from these studies. Yeah? Also, I have been involved with this for a long time. This is really interesting. We've been pushing for this, and we've been getting the information now, the evidence to back us up. And I've been talking about these stats that nobody really wanted to hear. What are these stats? Remember we showed you the 7-year pathway? About Today, 4,000 students will apply for the first degree. How many students will go on to the second degree? About 1,800. What happens to the 2,200 people who don't go on to that degree? What happens to the skills that they have? What happens to their futures? They don't stay in the profession. They do something else. But what kind of profession, what kind of education should they have then? We're talking about 40, 50% of students who are not going to have an architectural career, who want an architectural education. What do we do with them? The stats also reveal, sorry, I'll move on, a major shift. The stats also reveal the kinds of skills that we have. And I usually show this, you know these famous people, they have all these skills. I also show these people. You might not know them. Arunatai Roy, Anthony Quinn, Benjamin Netanyahu, John Scully. This is one of the Pet Shop Boys who was a few years ahead of me at Liverpool University. Tom Hardy, he was at the AA. This fellow, he was actually a top student at Princeton. He's a movie star. His name is Jimmy Stewart, yeah? Sukarno, President of Indonesia, President of Singapore. This is Red L. Yankovic, Caltech Poly. They're all architectural education, but they're not architects. And it's interesting because I also show this. These are some of my former students. Patrick Lynch, who is now famous in London. She's a chef, she's a pilot, he's an urban planner, she heads Birmingham School, she's a UN lawyer, she's an interior designer. He works for Richard Rogers, she works for Disney Pixar making cartoons using her CAD skills. He's a lawyer, she's an art historian. They do different things. They take different pathways. So maybe it's useful to consider the kinds of transferable skills that we really need to build into an architectural education, as opposed to a very strict and very narrow education that we have seen through the years. The statistics are also telling us very, very interesting things. In maybe about 2008 or so, about 10 years ago, I would still get questions, you know, from people who want to do architecture. They will ask me, is architecture for girls? I would still get that question. Now, we have about 52% female. Yesterday, your class here was about, I think, 12, they're all female. In our staff, we have about, I think today it's about 38% or 40% teaching staff, female, in the UK. And in the profession, it's about the same, but it's a major problem as well, because many of them leave. It's also an ethnic problem. It's an ethnic problem. When I was at Leicester, the white English male student is about 5%, male and female. If not for the Lithuanians, the Polish, and the Greeks, and the Cypriots, the Europeans will be a minority. The majority is 45% British, Asian, and ancestry, Indian. A lot of them Muslim, yeah? And for years, until I got there, they used to take all the students to Rome, to the seat of the Vatican, and these guys will be, you know, in the hijab, in the full uniform, and in the Pakistani robe, and you take them to the seat of the Catholic Church. They don't understand it. So we changed it. We brought them to Istanbul so they can see the Hagia Sophia. It's a different way of enthusing them. And I'm talking about this because it's a nuance to know who you're dealing with. It's also interesting that that crew of students weren't interested in a job with Daniel Lipskin or Norman Foster or whatever, because they came from a different background. They're more interested in setting up their own business as soon as possible. And it's a different way of evaluating what you're teaching them for. So these are some of the stats that we talked about. It's very useful to know your stats. So I would encourage you to somehow manage the statistics that you have here so you know what you're dealing with. But we have these three states which I also like to speak about. We've spoken a little bit about the discourse, but spatial agency and the profession we'll talk about in a bit. But let's start with this, right? We looked at that. One of the issues in Britain is this fascination about building. So when I deal with students, the first question I ask them is this. First year, first day, architecture school, what's the difference? And they're stumped. But I tell them that this is the question that you have to take through with you for your career. You need to find that difference. You really need to find that difference for yourself. And it's not so much understanding what it isn't, but what it is for you. I'll skip some of those slides. right? But what is really interesting is the form of knowledge and how we deal with it, right? The first is techne, it's a skill. We deal with that all the time. We deal with episteme as well, which is about a distance knowledge, epistemic knowledge. The third one, we deal with it, but we don't realize that we deal with it, which is empiria, which is experiential knowledge. It's important to have these three identified so you know what you're dealing with. And the ways that we are teaching, how we're dealing with this is really interesting. I've always tried to get schools to work around this concept of conversation. We have colleagues here from the AA, and back in my day, we used to call the AA the glorified pub, because that's what it was. They had no studios, they didn't have workshops, whatever. It was just a place where people would talk about architecture. And that's what's really important. What's really important in architecture school is how students talk to each other, not just how the educators speak to each other, to the students. One of the interesting things as well that we realize is the difference between pedagogy and andragogy, teaching of more mature people, teaching of adults. And I think in North America you have this realization and this difference where you have graduate school, and there's always this major complaint that in 3.5 years of graduate school they don't have enough technical skills, but they pick it up very quickly, but they're easier to deal with. After 6 months you can talk about very complex urban issues, which you can't do with first year 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds. And that's a really important difference, to realize how we teach and the types of forms of teaching that we have. Whether we teach by instruction, by inspiration, by example, and so forth. And these are various kinds of teaching that we can explore, which we use. So I'm not advocating any particular type, but it's useful to know what you have and what you should try to explore or develop. One of the other interesting things that I've done in my career is to look at these legacies. Some of these guys are gone, but many of them had famous schools. They ran famous schools. And I'm interested in not just how they started these famous schools, but how these schools died the moment they died or they left. When Dalibor Vesely, who was my teacher, this guy, when he left Cambridge, the whole school collapsed. It collapsed. He was so powerful as an influence, the whole school, everybody was a phenomenologist. When the new head came in, the new head was an environmentalist. Suddenly, everybody was an environmentalist. How did this happen? Now, this is an interesting thing to recognize because we are living in this community of people who can shift, become like chameleons very quickly. Same thing happened in the AA. When Evelyn Boyarsky died, Peter Cook took a lot of people and went to the Bartlett. The Bartlett was a functionalist school. Nobody wanted to go to the Bartlett back in the day. It was a boring school. When he shifted everything in the Bartlett, suddenly everybody in the Bartlett became like the AA, doing all this crazy stuff. They never used to do that. It's interesting to understand their legacies of how powerful a discourse can be, but that star can die. Now, if you want a school to last for a long time, it's interesting to know how you manage that. So these are my influences. These are my teachers in Singapore, in Cambridge, and Marco Frascati. These are polymaths. They know everything. Incredible kind of genius type characters. Next, I wrote, Marco died not long ago, and I wrote his obituary, and there's a conference next week I'm going to in London, in Kingston. All the former students will celebrate his work. And one of the things I wrote about him, I think few people realize, I said he taught in parables. What do I mean? I'll give you an illustration. This is a very famous essay by Adolf Loos. Adolf Loos, the Viennese architect. Now, he also taught in parables. Now, if you don't know this story, I'll break it down for you. What he wrote in this story was about a rich man who had an architect friend, and the architect designed everything in the life for this rich man. If the rich man wanted to give presents to his children, the architect would design the wrapper, he will design his clothes, design everything. Now, after you read this, you get really disgusted about how far the architect went and how weak the client was. The real lesson here is how far should design go? What limits does design have? Now, I can instruct you and tell you that you should only spend 4 hours on the design. 4 days, 4 months. But that's instruction. This is a form of a parable. We talk about a story. You know how far design should go. I know how far design should go. We don't need to agree. But we all agree that design has limits. And this is how Marco Frascati taught. And this is how perhaps we should consider teaching. via parables, because we don't teach concrete, finite certainties. We teach life lessons. And it's interesting to know how you can inculcate that, right? Another aspect of what we do is heuristic, which is research, which is through discovery. Now, in architecture, I think we misuse the term quite a bit. People call everything research. If I really don't know anything about Assumption Cathedral, I'm looking it up for the first time, I'm finding it out, I'm investigating. I'm looking for information. Like I look up somebody's number in the phone book or word meaning in the dictionary. I look it up for the first time. Research is something else. You're looking at it third, fourth time, sixth time, and you're looking for something that nobody's noticed before. And it's interesting how we can take that different shift to create new knowledge in architecture, right? One of the other things I talk about is three futures in education. Many schools are very limited and very proud of how they are single futures, and I find it really strange why they would say that. What is a single future school? The single future school is the one that is most proud about people who get jobs immediately after education. That's not important, because with the first job that you get, you're going to be told what to do in that office. When are you going to be designing in your own hand? 7 or 8 or 10 years down the line, when you're running your own office, when you're a senior associate, you're actually having some influence in the city, right? That's the near future. So we actually educate for that near future. The immediate future, you're just going to be doing some drafting or some CAD work that somebody's going to tell you what to do. The far future is where we educate you to look after our cities when we've left. Look after our futures, yeah? So we should be looking at a three-future school, or maybe one with another future. We also looked at this in the UK. We looked at the deregulation of Part 1. This is a bit of a nonsense, all these regulation stuff, and I'm very happy that you're independent here, but I don't know whether maybe one day you might be in a more complex situation. So we looked at the connection between the stakeholders, and it's important. I know you're not connected with other universities, but one day you may be. I'll give you an example of how ridiculous all this is. You must have Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 in the UK. We had a guy who finished Part 2, was practicing in Manchester for a number of years, but he couldn't register as an architect because he didn't have Part 1. So we had to put him in the undergraduate school in year 3 so he can get the first degree and then go and register as an architect. Now, it's all a bit of a nonsense, but the regulations are sometimes really stupid. And the stupidity is also something I'm very interested in our profession. It exists. The protectionism, the jealousy, and the stupidity, it exists. And it affects us. So I've spoken a bit about this. I'll just quickly move on. I've written about that now. These are some of the stakeholders. Another important thing is this, what I call digital space. It's important to understand this real, major shift. It's disruptive. You could give a lecture today on Alberti. The students will go online, they will look up all the lectures on Alberti in the world. They'll look at one at Harvard, they'll look at one in Milan, they'll look at one in wherever, and they start comparing. Because you are now on the world stage. Yourself, you don't realize it, but you are on the world stage. And that's no way out of this. Students and people who are looking at your schools will be looking at the digital presence first. So they will go on the website, and this, I encourage you to do this to build a very strong digital presence. Because if I want to know what's going on in Kharkiv school, I just go online immediately, I'll know whether the school is happening or not. It's interesting that these schools have built up their own websites. Yeah? Also, how do you teach? I've been introducing this for a number of years in the schools that I've been head at. I stopped people teaching CAD and drawing. We used to have people who do that. And my argument is that, nobody teaches them Microsoft Word or typing, but they write essays anyway. Nobody writes by hand anymore, everybody types. So why should we teach CAD? The students actually teach themselves. So we use these websites like lynda.com, but this is a specific one called Black Spectacles. They're designed by people in Gensler and IIT, is it, in Illinois? And it's specifically for architects. So you can use this web videos, and students watch these videos, and they teach themselves things that you don't need necessarily to teach them. Many years ago, I was interviewed for a job which I didn't take at Liverpool. I'm a graduate of Liverpool University. So they interviewed me and said, we'd like you to join us, but we want you to do one thing. We want you to teach a studio based on computer CAD. And my argument was, why should I do that? If Rotring invents a new pen or Stettler invents a new pen, you're not going to design a studio around that pen. You design education around how you want to teach, not just the techniques. And we might think, okay, that kind of sounds a bit silly, right? Why they would do that? But we have people who do this today. You know, it's just shift. It's no longer the computer. It's a specific aspect of computing teaching. Also, students no longer read. They don't. They go on websites, they watch videos, the journals are all online, so everything's on the world stage, everything is immediately there. Anything that is not on Arc Daily is not important. Anything that is there is important to them. It's a different world of how we used to think education was built up. You know? So it's a different kind of workspace. So all these kinds of paradigm shifts that we have maybe forces us to design a new form of curricula. And I might have some time to try to introduce some of these ideas. So to be aware of disruptive technologies, new technologies and so forth. Now, networking is probably interesting for you to consider. We spoke about this last night with several people. This was a network that was in the US. Why is it important? I think there is a point where we also need to have this kind of reality of a world stage. You need to know what's happening where. You need to know what other people are doing. You need that kind of comparison or that kind of competitive edge. Yeah? Spatial agency. This is how you develop your marketing. This is how you develop the reach of the school. Yeah? By having connections with the community. So we have after-school programs. High school students come to our school to do design studios and so forth, so they understand what architecture might be if they were going to take it up. Yeah? Other networks which are very useful are these. Some of these are very useful, so I think maybe you can join the EAAE, European Union of Architects. You certainly can get involved with the AAE. I was the founder of the AAE about 10 years ago. What is it? It's the Association of Architectural Educators in the UK and Ireland. Connects about 40 or 50 of the 60 schools in the UK. Not all of them are there. Now the last one is really interesting, particularly for this stage of this school. What is this? This is North American. It's been going on since 1973. I've been involved in a few of those conferences. It's a very interesting conference. Not a high-level conference because you won't find people from Harvard or MIT there, but you will find people from Louisiana State, Texas A&M, and all the other kinds of schools, they all go there. What is it? It's the National Conference for the Beginning Design Student. They're obsessed with one thing, how to start architecture education on the right foot, how to teach drawing, how to teach technology, how to teach first year, how to teach people who are just starting in architecture so that they'll stay in it. They're concerned about it. Every year they have a program, so it's useful to know where it is. Always in North America, yeah? Okay. So some of the kind of things I think that are useful to think about are all of these. I'll just kind of briefly speak about it, right? Studio space is a problem in many schools. I don't think it is a problem for you here, but it becomes a bit of a problem when universities start to control it. They want to have control of the space that you have. Every 5 years or so, you read a higher education press, there was some clown somewhere who will argue that architecture doesn't belong in the university. Why? Because it takes up so much money. It takes up so much space. The students are never in the studio. You know, it takes up so much resources and the payoff is very, very little. It's a major problem. Not so much in North America that I've observed, but certainly in the UK. Now, this guy started something really interesting of how you should teach architecture at all. He started with a project, and there were no lectures. This is in Cape Town. No lectures whatsoever. No technology, no structures, no history. He started with just a project. It was a housing project. And the students would then say, okay, I don't know about this, so how do I find out? So it was led by student need for discovery, right? Interesting, but has some problems. The unit system, how you organize schools and how you organize teaching units, Now the unit system is pretty much taken over the UK. Where has it come from? It actually started the AA as a summer school in 1972. It was so popular, they made it Elvin made it the full curriculum, and it just stayed. Now the AA's curriculum, if I'm not wrong, still has studio and technical studies and general studies, just three things. Not like all the other schools that I've been involved with, which are traditional university with your structures lectures, your environmental lectures, your lighting lectures, acoustics, and all that kind of stuff that comes with it, history of architecture and so forth, drawing classes even, right? Now, in my time when I was a student, I did all the mathematics. I don't know about many of you. I did all the structural calculations and all that because we were all taught that. There are about 60 schools of architecture in the UK. I think maybe about 58 of them run a BA. 4 or 5 of them run a BSc. Important difference. Because the BSc schools still teach the mathematics and so forth. The other schools, no. No structural calculations, no structural engineering. Nothing. It's almost art school. And that's how it's become. Most schools just run effectively 4 blocks like you have. A context block, which is humanities. Design block, which is 50%. A technology block. And the last block is communications. So you can have professional studies and so forth, right? All that kind of science that we used to have, all the bending moments and all that, that's gone out the window. In North America, you still have a lot of this. You still have all that kind of subjects. Yes? Okay. Now, we have looked at some of this, and I'll briefly maybe just kind of ask you to look at it. Maybe we can talk about it because I'm running out of time. Yeah? But I think these are the kinds of things that we should really concern ourselves with. Just so to end, we should be looking at how we deal with the kinds of tensions that we have and the types of people that we have. I think we have this, which I'm going to maybe spend some time on. This sense of servitude, that we are still in the service industry. We have these jealousies and arrogance and this modest docility. Now, what I talk about arrogance, yeah? I always tell architecture students, you have to be arrogant. You can't say, well, no, architecture competition, you win. Next one, I'll take it. No, you want to win it. You have to have that arrogance. We also build schools around this notion of genius. The one solo genius. Yeah? We have started thesis programs with 3 or 4 students sharing the same project. Now, when I first encountered this notion, I was really kind of disgusted by it. I said, why do you want to do it? But it's the reality of how the market works. So again, I'll just ask you to kind of look at this, and maybe we can talk about some of these things later on. Okay? I won't take more time, and I'll just end here. And I think we're going to have a discussion later. So I hope that this will just kind of provoke that discussion, and I'm happy to substantiate or tell you a bit more about some of these ideas that I'm happy to share with you. Thank you.
Like in the beginning, you said about the problem that a lot of students, the first year or after, that they leave the architectural field and pursue some other career. And you said there's a problem. Me, personally, my first education was in computer science, and I left the other industry to become an architect. So don't you think that is somehow a natural process, since people just don't know what they want to do in the beginning?
Yes, you're right. There's a lot of shift. A lot of people don't know what they want to do. So what they have here is a 0 year, which helps to alleviate that problem. We are starting a 0 year as well in Norwich. It helps to alleviate that problem. The problem that I mentioned in year 1 is quite acute because you waste 1 year, or you don't waste 1 year. You use that year to discover yourself. Okay, we have a lot of students who repeat the first year. And the second time they do it, they sail through. They become the top students because the first year they're just nervous, or they're living on their own for the first time. But the problem is also an exaggerated problem that carries on, because we have students who leave after second year or third year, or stop after the first degree and don't carry on. The real question is, what kind of education should we have? What kind of curriculum should we have to give them the necessary skills so they don't waste their time and they carry on in society in a very useful way? In Australia, they shifted this. They also have the 3+2, but they don't even start designing until the second year. In Sydney, Western Australia, and also in Melbourne, they've started this. They don't design anything in the year one. They just do humanities and whatever. They design very small projects like you do here, only in year 2. And then year 3, they do some more. And then, because, you know, you can have a very short education. This is the thing I'm alluding to. We don't realize it right now. Many of my students that I've dealt with in year 3, the quality of their work is almost as good as year 5. I say almost, not quite, almost. Because they're not quite as mature. But you can reach there. The projects are quite complex. If you've seen the projects in London, year 3, very, very complex projects. It is possible. No? So the question is, you know, how we maximize an efficiency of education.
I have one question to you, a very specific one. My experience of visiting Western universities, mostly American ones, was that there is a huge amount of talk about form. And what I like about your list is that form is not there. So I presume that you also find it not that relevant. But I would like to ask you what replaces that? If we get questions, okay, but where's the form? Where are the formal studies?
There's a fascination in North America about form in some schools, not many schools, but many schools, okay? In Britain, it's also form, but in a different way, about the building, the object. The object, and we spoke about that with many people. And I've written about this notion of objecthood. They're obsessed with the object. What we don't realize is what our own precious commodity is. I talked about the architect and the 20 people around him. The structure engineer is better at structures than you ever will be in your lifetime, right? The quantity surveyor knows more about counting the beans than you will ever be at counting beans, right? And sometimes they know more about specification than you do because that's what they deal with all the time. So there's always an expert, but what is the one commodity that we control that none of them do? That we maybe share with a few others, okay? Not form, space. The landscape designer also deals with space, but landscape space. Urban designer deals with urban space. Interior designer deals with interior space. But that's what we control. Spatial ordering. This is why I don't have much respect for Norman Foster, because he just does buildings, and his spaces are just normal commercial office buildings. There's nothing interesting about them. They're like any Con Peterson and Fox building or any SOM building anywhere in the world. It's not particularly innovative. Spatially, you know, form, yeah, they're interested in that. And this is, I think, also part of the problem, because of 99% of the applicants to our schools in Britain, they have to write an essay, right? They will all write an essay and they will draw the same Gherkin building in London. All of them do. And what is that about? That's just form, not space.
Okay, thank you, Raymond, again. So I want to introduce you our second presenter. It's Monya de Marchí, the director of the first year in AA, and I just transfer your word. So.
I want to thank you all for inviting us here. I'm an architect. I teach at the AA from 2005, so it's been quite a few years. I just want to tell you a little bit, very briefly, about my background. I studied in Venice. Actually, I started to study architecture when I was 14, so I'm extremely passionate about the profession, and I do love buildings. So I started to study architecture when I was 14 years old. Then I did the university in Venice. I came to London to do a master's degree, the DRL, Design Research Laboratory. And from 2005, I've been involved in AA in a different part. I was teaching intermediate diploma school, which is a studio, a unit-based system, and I've been running the first year now for 11 years. So I would share a bit some of the challenges of what is teaching, what I think is teaching. And of course, yes, some of them, they're challenges and they're still challenges, so I don't have a solution of it. But I would say, first I would say like just a few things. So just for you to know, to become an architect in UK, students need to have first part one, which is a 3 years degree. Then they take 1 year of practical experience, they come back to school for a part 2, they take another stage 2 of practical experience, and then they do part 3. The challenges, as already been mentioned, that we especially have in UK, that we need to teach to an international student body that will practice worldwide with the restriction of a UK system of what does it mean to become an architect. So we need always to kind of consider that a lot of the students will actually not practice in the UK. And at the same time, even if they are, even if you're an architect working in a specific context, we are constantly working on worldwide scenarios. Another thing that I always find fascinating is to look at the plan of the school to really see what is next to a student's room. So the first year studio is up there in facing Morrow Street. This is the ground floor plan. You see that there is, when you enter, there is a lecture hall, there is a gallery, there is a bookshop, there is a membership office. So I find it always fascinating to see how a school that teach architecture need to go beyond this kind of idea of a classroom, and instead need to become a place where discussion in architecture happen. So this is a way as well sometimes to just see what is happening actually in a school. I said, okay, this is just few of the things that we spend our time in. We spend our time in the bookshop, reception, with the different prototypes, but we spend time in a bar. Chatting is always the quite important place to discuss. We know that to study architecture is a long profession. It takes many years. So as a school, often what we need to think is how do we actually enrich 5 years of learning in a school, if you do want to avoid the idea of being in a classroom. And this is how we do it. We do it with constantly have events, lecture, with what we call public program, etc. If there is a long queue in front of the door, it's a good sign that something is happening, also because then you don't have only students, but you have different people coming in. Again, of course, I'm talking about a school that has been active for many, many years. So there is quite a lot as well, the legacy that take the people in. But it's good to know that to attempt to have a discussion that go beyond students talking to teacher is quite important. I'm not going to read all this one now, but I just want to say I prepared this kind of short talk with 6 challenges, and I'm going to show you how we try to address it. So the question number 1 is what to study and learn, and how to study and learn. So who define what to study? Who define the curriculum? I don't think is the teacher, I think are the students. And who define how we study? That's our job. So this is a photo that I took into the wall and the bar just before coming here. Is an open letter to the architectural community, a call for curriculum change that is being put forward from the students and the teacher in different schools in UK. I'm not going to read it all, but you see, of course, they want to have a curriculum that focus more as well on climate change, on the earth resources, etc. But also they give us clear hints on how they want that we address them as a teacher. Which is, for example, in the last point, is to join us in asking RIBA and ARB to centralize the social and technical dimension of ecological changes. So I said that who define what to study is an active and sound student body. An active and sound student body, and to me that the students should just say, I want to do that. But they need to be as well, have a bit of suspension of judgment sometimes to know what they don't know, to trust people with experience, but at the same time be active and speak up. And then who define how to study and learn? This is the job of experienced thinkers, architects, and a teacher. And I want to underline the word experience. There is a bit too much sometimes the tendency of saying, I am an amateur in the profession. And you see quite a lot of amateurs, and I think it can be problematic. I think people should have experience. Mentioning as well at one point that was mentioned before, you find quite often a lot of PhD graduate teaching design, but they never actually practice, or never been in an office, or never been in a construction site. This one can be very problematic because you end up with students asking or putting forward what they want to learn, but then what you get as a result of the output of the portfolio, you see there is a lot of narrative, visual scenario, a lot of manifestos, but very little actually testing and understanding what are the essential skills that help to actually address the problem. So instead of narrative, I would say we need to think more about forecasting that is based on quantifiable data. Visual scenario should be replaced by working with technology. Storytelling should be replaced by collaborating with skill-based practices. And written manifesto should be replaced by test and output with quantifiable results. I just want to, and now from now I'm just going to talk more about the first year. I want to say like the school is unit-based. The particularity of the AA is the multiplicity of curriculum running in parallel. So what you see here is just my point of view, and I'm extremely happy to be in a place where my colleagues think exactly the opposite of what I think. So in a way, we kind of also allow different things happen simultaneously, and the students have this kind of exposure. So I said this is only like my view and not the view of the entire school. I just want to mention it. So the first challenge we have when we have students coming from everywhere and being first-year students is what is the content of the curriculum? So how do we address architecture as a historical discipline? Do we study the canon? Or do we explore idiosyncratic and unwritten history? Of course, we try to explore what is idiosyncratic and unwritten history, means that quite often students don't find the material in books. So these are some of the case studies we gave to the student, even purely by testing tectonic. And sometimes the way we do it is just by going and see different buildings. This is the first test, the first exercise that they do as a first-year student as soon as they start the school. We give them a case studies, they need to go to see it, measure it, and build models. I mean, the idea is now that they learn immediately what we say is the language of architecture, which is read plan, section, elevation, understand scale. I say it is a language in itself. So that's what they need to become quite an expert immediately. As I said, we go to quite a lot of construction site. We like to see how buildings actually get built. And we just kind of go around and just see different buildings. This again is, we are in Italy, and then in Venice, and then on the right we were in Paris. And it's always the idea that when a student travels, then they need to bring back the material that they did and show to the other students, because the trips are optional, and we let the student to choose if they want to come or not. But at the same time, we want to make sure that who does not join a trip still have the possibility to learn something from the other students. So again, it's quite a lot of like taking specific case studies and trying to reframe them or rethink how they can be relevant today in, let's say, the 21st century. So even if we give them, let's say, Le Corbusier Maison Dominant, which is one that you see on the yellow photos on the top left, the student was asked to change the brief and update by thinking, well, if Le Corbusier has to do the brief now, what will be actually the brief? So even when we take case studies, not a question of just a repetition or a replica, but it's a question of actually understanding what was the question at that moment from the architect and how do we reframe it. This again, quite a lot of again case studies and thinking different way of re-seeing or reframing question. So I mean, we can just say if we look at Boulet through the eyes of Andy Warhol, with a colorful Marilyn Monroe, how actually the space of the building will be if it was not just a black and white. So we also kind of, sometimes we look at visualization, how architecture is represented in books, and question, well, actually, what can it be if we add something else? So the challenge, second challenge, how do we study and pay attention to the past? So here I just show some of the ideas. Again, you will see quite a lot that what we try to do, we try to minimize talking, especially with the first year. We do silent jury. We say always that the work has to speak for itself. So here are the students, pretty much just in front of the drawing, giving a model to a juror, and the juror tried to figure out what he's looking at. So we try to make sure that the work speaks for itself. Challenge number 3, which is the challenge that after the students are very vocal. As you showed in the first slide, they want us to always think how we engage with the present condition and the relevant or pressing question. So how do we engage with the unpredictable forces of our present world? How do we address current and pressing questions raised by our student body? How do we explore and how do we act? Again, we try to avoid the representation and telling, but we try to think how we construct and act. We do quite a lot of exercises of field work. We say we are sometimes more as an explorer. These are some of the case studies we give to the student to look at. From Geneva Freeport in Switzerland, database, airport, Glastonbury Festival, etc. So this one we try, going back to the question before, I mean, we have the Shard in London. In this one we try not to give, to have an opinion about it. Actually, we take these buildings or a condition that are happening in the city. Sometimes maybe they're building, they're not architecture, you know, if we go back to the point before, but we only by studying them, we can then actually have an informed opinion instead of just telling the students what we think. We just let the students pretty much to make up their own mind. And again, they need to understand that it doesn't matter, I mean, it's not Adolf Loos, or it's not Le Corbusier, and sometimes it's a data storage, or it's the CERN, but still they need to understand what is the enclosure of the space, what is the condition, what is the light quality, what is the temperature, etc. So they need to take it seriously, and then they can start to understand how also all these kind of buildings, often inaccessible for a human, are actually defined in our territory. Another thing that we do is looking at what we call the new typology, and I think I was speaking with some of you guys, some of the students yesterday. There was when you were talking about the clients, it was a kind of similar. There was a similar question coming forward, which is even to understand when we take a mobile phone and we look how a specific application is actually influencing the way building typology are now designing or constructing our city. For example, how we deliver your food, etc. So we have, we try to pay quite a lot of attention on this kind of social conditions that are happening. Again, without being judgmental, we suspend judgment quite a lot, instead of we just try to study it. When we ask a student to read a text, in this case, what you see on the bottom right, we ask a student to read Junk Space by R.M. Collis, but by going out and actually engaging or acting in the site or in the context with words. So what the student did was taking the text, Junk Space, and then just writing sentences around the city and see how people react. So we try also to think different way of actually acting with text instead of just talking. Again, it's mainly with the first year we do a lot of interruption, means we stop and travel. I always say, like, teaching and learning should not happen in a space with desk and chair, but I think it's back to the UK problem. Space is expensive, so we try to actually utilize the cities and the world in a different way. So yeah, we travel a lot and we work quite a lot directly with specific places. Challenge number 4, going back to the question before about form. If the design of buildings, architectural element, typology still matter, how do we actually teach it? There is quite a lot of sometimes places where form, composition, organization is been bit maybe too much for me, from my point of view, left out. Instead, we embrace it. I mean, the way we embrace it is by having exercise on form, aesthetic, and sensation. I mean, form, we mean just because it is space, it is how we enter space, how we perceive it, which kind of effects we give you, a space give. In a way, like if you go to see a building and you want to go back, why do you want to go back? So we spend a lot of time of teaching students actually how to give a value, understand what is a value of specific exercises. And the only way to do it, we think, is through iterations and through quantity, through repetition. So in this case, we're just asking students to design different organizational system applied to a tower, to a block, or to a flat horizontal type of building. And we do many, many formal exercises. This is only just a 6 weeks exercise. Again, these are silent juries. Students are not allowed to talk, tutor even less. We just let the work speak for itself. We just put it there and try to understand why we pick one option instead of another one, which value we give to that option, and trying to figure out if there is a common value that we can actually have. Again, you will see there is just quantity of material. Of course, one-to-one is also a way to understand how to explore or test ideas. Students sometimes built a one-to-one. In this one was a one-to-one pavilion where students were asked to build it in a group of 4 and then sleep for an entire night. Well, they should have spent one day, but they just spent only a few hours in the night in the square, and then in the morning after they have to say what they felt. I mean, they end up all sleeping on one of the pavilion and left the other one completely not inhabited, so that was a sign. But we do quite a lot with this kind of like a one-to-one where a specific project need to become design. And I was saying before, is aesthetic matter? How do you teach aesthetic? How do you teach sensation? Or how do you try to construct sensation? I would say we think it's very difficult to design good buildings, and we think there is not enough teaching about how to design a good building, why a building is better than another one. So I'm extremely fortunate that the school support the first year to do that. So we leave out maybe politics, sociologists, and economists, and all these other things, which usually students address when they are on their second, third, fourth, and fifth year. In the first year, it's a bit too early to make this kind of discussion, so we want to make sure they actually understand space and understand how specific things can actually make a difference. So again, we just test material or how different senses can become active, and not only the visual. And again, we travel and we work quite a lot on the road, as you can see here, and then we always bring back stuff to London. Challenge number 5, I still have 2 challenges, then I can stop. Challenge number 5, how do we act? So what are alternative business model? How do we communicate across culture, field? How do we communicate with client? And not only with the user of an architecture. Who is the audience? We always say, like, especially in the first year, because the students are just starting to study architecture, one job that we have is to make them passionate about it. So we are extremely passionate about the topic, but we are also aware that clients are other people that are the lovers of architecture. Clients are the people that usually invest money on your design. So they're really people often that have an extremely insightful and interest on space. Often you see that clients are people that wanted to study architecture, but they didn't do it. So it's kind of sometimes good to understand who they are, what they do, what do they like. And so we always look as well at an historical example of a relationship between clients and architects. And we pay attention who are the kind of the current clients now that are investing on architecture. At the end of the year, we ask students to act, like imagine themselves, they are architects. So they need to imagine themselves like after 8 years of education. And we tell them, okay, imagine you're setting up your own practice. You're entering your first competition. So we always give them a competition. On the left is the Parc de la Villette competition that we did a few years ago. And on the right is one building that is getting turned down right now in central London. It's a brutalist car park that instead of being preserved and reused is getting turned down, and one luxury hotel is getting built. So we asked instead of a student to take a position. We made a competition, and again, it was a silent jury where the students just showed their own entry to a panel of jurors. We ask students to design their ideal practice. We say, okay, now you're an architect. Imagine the first 3 years of your practice. What are you going to do? How many people are you going to have in your office? Where are you going to be located? What is the output? What is the work you're going to investigate? So these are just sometimes diagrams that they do in order to think if they have this kind of hierarchical system or hierarchical organization of the architect as a main figure and quite a lot of people under, or vice versa. So it's always nice to see as of end of the first year what actually they would like to do. Well, often they don't understand the resources is a limit, so they always kind of have hundreds of people immediately think it can work for them, but this is, they try. And as well, like they start to think like what are the tools that they might need. So they always do like 3 diagrams. One diagram is what is the business model of the practice. Second diagram on the top is where is the practice. And third diagram you see on the bottom is what are the tools you need. So this is kind of like speculation that they try to do. Last challenge, how can we enhance the ephemeral aspects of learning, such a relationship, engagement, alongside the visual work produced by students? How do we foster what is not visible and quantifiable? I mean, it's clear that we are dealing with students. We're not dealing with the work of the students. And sometimes there is a bit of a misleading or confusion. We discuss a lot the work of the students, but not enough actually the students as a person, like how the person is different after some experience. So I always say, like, for me, what is important is not too much what. And I think even the question I was asking yesterday the students, maybe they realized that I was always asking not what did you learn or what did you do, what was the brief, but more how did you do it. And that for me is always important to understand when you ask the how to see actually if the learning is taking places or not. And learning takes place only through iteration, repetition, quantity, more than quality. Because you just need to do it many times wrong and then you just do it better. And same thing if you learn how to play an instrument, you're not going to immediately play, you need to get it wrong quite a few times. So how did you learn? I think it's important when you, as well as for in general, to look like how did you learn, how did you make a project? Do you know way to start a project? Do you know how to stop? When do you stop? Do you stop just because the last day you need to stop? I mean, sometimes when you have a brief from a tutor, after a day, maybe you're done. It doesn't mean you need to wait 6 weeks, and sometimes maybe you actually need 3 months. So this kind of a bit of more, be much more active as a student and be more aware of actually how much time do you need to learn, I think is very, very important. As a tutor, what we do, we just kind of give you some hints, but then you need to take quite responsibility on actually on your learning. And how do you know what is better? When you do different iteration or different options, how do you know which one is better without asking someone else that has more experience, like a teacher? So this is again, last thing is very important. We say like working group or working in a different conditions. Students tend to sometimes work individually in a group. On the left is, this one is the first year, how many briefs we do, the timeline of an academic year. We do 6 briefs. Well, I set the general topic, but then I have a team of another 6 tutors defining their own take on the brief. But of course, what you see in the middle is what we think the students did and learn. But then on the right, you actually see what actually the student did. So that's why I said like the what we do, but actually how learning takes place. There are 2 different things. And the only thing that students can do is just for now just be exposed to different material, but also be aware that probably they're going in deep only with a very few topics, and this should not be forgotten. So the last thing, what to study, what to learn, I always say like we always give a space with a desk and chair and nothing else. As you can see, they're pretty nothing fancy because we expect the student to just get rid of immediately of desk and chair. And instead use the space to make work and to explore the world by making. So is there space at the end of the day when we have no control? And this is the space, if you need to get a bit of an idea, this is a space for 70 students. Okay, so not 10, 11, 12, these are 70 students. They fit here, and then that's just how they do it. They just kind of constantly change the space. And that's why I say like, these are some of the challenges that we have, I think they kind of share, and I'm here for any questions if you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Monia. You've done a great job in changing the first year from what I remember, the first year that I knew the AA, in a very positive way. I'm very intrigued by the silent jury, and that's a great amount of faith that you invest in the visual ability for the students to make judgments. How do you articulate that later in some other session, or how do you judge the students who don't get it? I tell you why. I had an English teacher when I was in secondary school, And he was not a very good teacher. He couldn't tell you the rules of grammar. He just said it didn't sound right, which was not necessarily a wrong way to learn, because you can immerse yourself and you understand it if you hear it enough. But if you don't get it, you just don't get it. So how do you know?
So the silent jury happened during the term 2. So we also changed quite a lot the format of the discussion of the work in relation with the brief, because in the term 2 is when we do quite a lot of iteration or options. Like, so we teach the students, or we help the student to, let's say, if there are simple exercises like put a door on a wall. We were discussing yesterday. So if they need to do 40 example or 40 model of put a door on the wall, and tell me what is the value, or like which one is the value, which one is better, then the students need to be able to show what is the value through a drawing, and then we just sit down there and we need to see, and we can easily see which one is, if it's coherent with what the student is trying to say. So the silent jury, of course, is not something that you can do for any type of brief or any type of situation. I think it's only when you have a specific task that is almost have an objective solution, so it's not something too subjective. That's why I said, during tutorial, there is a lot of talking. It's only on the moment of presentations or when we have a guest that we have a silent jury. I hope I answered the question.
As background, Raymond, to the significant transitions that Monya has instituted in first year, there was also a background to that, which was that at a certain point under Brett Steele, there was an awareness that the AA had started to have a very large intake of students in 4th and 5th year that we hadn't taught in the first 3 years. And Brett wanted to change that pattern so that we would have a full 5-year program where we could really shape the education of an architect over 5 years. And it was also as part of that Monya was given, in a sense, the brief to really ensure that the first year would become a very successful foundation for a 5-year program. And so, Monya, one of my questions would be, if you were now looking at this from the point of view that it's really a 3-year program, how would you look at it differently, if at all?
I don't think there's much difference if it's a first, second, or third year, or if it's a part 1 and part 2 together, like a 5 years education. I mean, I think it was a discussion that I was saying before. I think the first year often, especially in AA, students come from many different backgrounds, they have different level. They need to get a bit of a wide exposure to things. So in that sense, for me, I would say like it does work. It works even if you have to study for a 3 years part 1 or a part 1 and part 2. I don't think there is a difference.
Let's say the reason why I'm picking up on this is if we take Raymond's point that, let's say, a lot of young students will do 3 years and then they'll go on to some other kind of profession or some other kind of education, conceivably following the 3 years. Should we be looking at architectural education as something that has a different kind of generalism? See, what you've done is created something where you're very clear about what an architect is, clearer than, I think, if we compare it to what Raymond was saying. Raymond was kind of suggesting the architect could be this, could be that, could be something else. They do this, they do another thing, we change our ideas. You've been perfectly rigorous and very consistent in how you see the work of an architect.
Well, that's why I keep saying, like, for me, I keep saying, like, my view is the view, what I'm saying now is the view of the first year. I'm not talking about 5 years course, everybody should just study buildings, etc. I'm just saying, and it's very simple actually, I think it's kind of simple, the reason for me why I do that, because I see sometimes that the students enter a school, that the school want to be very creative, so they don't do buildings at all. And then the students pick a unit, especially in UK system now is unit based. They don't do building. Then they never do building. At a certain moment they're like, oh, I am an architect. I'm going to work in an office, and actually I am not interested in designing building, but I'm actually not interested in doing architecture and they just study something else. So I always say they've been misled too much, I feel. So that's why I said, for me, like the first year should be about buildings. Then that's why I said, at the end of the first year, the students, even we do the exercise about setting up an idea of what the practice can be, then it can open up. But I would say, like in the beginning, for the first 8 months, if you just engage with space, buildings, technology, tectonic, and all these things, I don't see any harm on it. And as I was saying before, often there are quite a lot of people that are, say, passionate about architecture. They're not architects. Clients are the main one. I would say I would love to have people that love architecture, that want to be clients, to do a first year. I think there is quite a lot of clients that would like probably to study architecture without doing it for like 8 years. So yeah, that's maybe the answer.
Yes, actually, we will have our next presentation will be by Oleg and Kuba about the Hesha educational programs, and this presentation will be in Russian. So we have an interpreter, and she will come to you and translate it to English. Yeah. Тому ми перемикаємося на українську, російську. І, власне, я запрошую Олега Дроздова, засновника Хеша, та Куба порости про наші освітні програми у Харківській школі архітектури. Отже, Олег, я вам пас микрофон.
Наверное, какой-то очень важный момент, что все-таки, несмотря на то, что наш корабль плывет и достаточно как бы весело и точно знает свое направление, мы хотели вернуться все-таки как устроена структура, потому что вчера уже много мы рассказали о каком-то таком, я бы сказал, общем что ли, поле и представлении о том, как бы в какой плоскости находятся ценности школы, и, наверное, как она, наверное, с точки зрения каких-то эмоций, как она живет. И, наверное, надо сказать, что вот мы сейчас с Кубой хотели рассказать, из чего она как бы более структурно состоит. И, собственно, наверное, это таких 5 важных блоков, и часть из них это новые. Да, это публичная программа. Это вот мы сейчас, скажем, находимся в этом поле. Эти события происходят в течение года. Это самые разные выставки, лекции, дискуссии и самые разные, наверное, широкие мероприятия. И у нас есть Алина Исаян, которая отвечает и является координатором этого блока. Потом самый один из таких важнейших фундаментов это, собственно, нулевой год, подготовительный год, которого тоже 2 цели. Который создает, с одной стороны, комьюнити, сообщество вокруг школы, тоже является такой важной частью, как и публичная программа. В то же время он прямо готовит для поступления за счет вот этих разных опытов и таких мини-образовательных программ, он готовит студентов к курсу бакалавриата. И очень такую важнейшую роль главным координатором, таким вдохновителем является Настя Поли, которая где-то, наверное, рядом с нами сейчас. Да. И это как бы крайне важная институция. Мы еще, наверное, надо сказать, что мы запускаем новую, это 14+, такой блок, который будет как бы предтеча нулевого года. Это очень важная такая тоже программа, которая направлена как бы в 2 вещи. Опять же, это такое строительство сообщества вокруг школы, и, конечно, это наши будущие студенты в будущем. Потом это программа бакалавра, и Куба Сноупек является ее концептуальным лидером и как бы таким структурирующим дизайнером всей этой самой. Сейчас MA-программа, которую мы запускаем в этом году, она является таким более широким коллективным спектром, очень-очень важную такую главную структуру сделаны и Николасом Муром, мы еще об этом будем говорить, и к нам сейчас присоединяется еще Фулька Треферс, который будет куратор первого семестра, и мы еще углубим как бы ее структурирование. Но вся команда практически школы участвует в этом процессе. И еще очень важный как бы компонент это новая лаборатория, мы называем ее X-Lab, которая руководит и Елена Чернышова, и которая будет важным компонентом, которая будет объяснять очень много, как работает и структурирована школа, потому что X-Lab будет таким важным окном в реальное проектирование, в реальный сектор взаимодействия между проблемами, реальными клиентами и связи жизни и учебного процесса. И он будет таким важным координатором. И вот эти реальные проекты будут попадать уже в учебный процесс через X-Lab, как бы подготовленные, пройдя, и будут как бы частью этих всех компонентов такого взаимодействия с этими стейкхолдерами, клиентами и так далее. Ну и надо сказать, что вот вся важность, что эти блоки хороши сами по себе, но дело в том, что все вот здесь происходит взаимосвязь, во-первых, очень важной с публичной программой, которая в свою очередь вот как бы с появлением такого нового слоя, такого как клиенты, хэша или через лабораторию, да, которая заключает эти контракты. И здесь очень важно, что существует вот такое перетекание этих программ. С одной стороны, они как-то последовательные, с другой стороны, на самом деле эти связи гораздо сложнее, потому что уже сегодня, находясь в одном условно пространстве, идет взаимодействие между бакалаврами нулевым годом, это какие-то и новые человеческие такие связи, отношения, какая-то передача знаний, она существует в каком-то, в такой бесконечной, очень сложной такой взаимосвязи. И вот одно из таких пространственных решений организации школы будет, что студия будет располагаться вот в этом большом зале, где будет 3 разных поколения, я имею в виду с точки зрения образовательного процесса, как бы в одной комнате. И мы думаем, что это все усилит как раз взаимодействие между и публичной программой, и как бы вообще сообществом вне школы, да, с которым мы понимаем, что наше образование может быть по-настоящему актуальным, если мы выстроим эти очень такие важные мосты и взаимодействия с публикой в широком смысле, как бы с обществом, с конкретными индивидуумами и клиентами в будущем. Ну вот это, пожалуй, главное. Я передаю кликер Кубе, который расскажет о том, как устроен наш бакалавриат.
Может, начнем с того, что мы смотрели на разные программы BA и старались как-то позиционировать между ними и найти какие-то наиболее очевидные вещи, которые отличают эту программу от других. И первое — это то, что это такая постоянная студия, что все вместе, все работают вместе, все встречаются в этом пространстве. Это разделение между разными частями программы, оно иногда теряется тоже как бы разделение между разными иерархиями. В целом это такая просто вот такая большая студия, где все коллективно вместе, а потом индивидуально как-то вместе проектируют, учатся. Второе — это то, что мы называем связь с реальностью. Мы стараемся эту связь, с одной стороны, сохранять, чтобы не получилось так, что мы просто придумываем какие-то вещи, а они не имеют никакой связи с тем, что происходит на самом деле. Поэтому мы в проект с прошлого года пригласили клиентов, которые рассказывали про то, что они бы хотели. Мы всегда даем настоящий участок студентам, которые должны туда пойти, как бы его посмотреть, почувствовать. А с другой стороны, мы не хотим, чтобы эта связь с реальностью была только в одну сторону, мы хотим, чтобы она была критическая, чтобы, например, вот этот клиент, чтобы спросить у него, посмотреть, что на самом деле ему надо, а потом поставить это под вопрос вопрос, подумать, точно ли так. Получилось довольно интересно, что действительно был диапазон таких ответов. Некоторые были напрямую, отвечали на то, что клиенты говорили, некоторые более абстрактно, некоторые вообще уходили дальше. Но это только пример. В целом мы очень сильно стараемся придерживаться реальности. Третье, я написал тектоника, но в целом суть в том, что мы стараемся показывать, что красота, она в логике, что вот эта бесконечная форма, что это не тот способ, как мы думаем. Мы хотим, чтобы то, что студенты проектируют, имело смысл, чтобы это было связано с их наблюдениями, с тем, что они увидели, с настоящими проблемами, чтобы было логическое, и чтобы эта красота и пространство формы, она была связана именно с логикой. Ну и, мне кажется, четвертая такая черта, которая очень сильно отличает ХШ от других школ в Украине, это точно. И это связь с большим нетворком экспертов, которых очень много сейчас в зале, и, наверное, я сам являюсь частью этого нетворка, которые не живут в Украине. И постоянно просто приглашаем новых людей. Мне кажется, это такие 4 важные вещи. И сейчас очень важно. Мы разделили программу на 4 блока. Эти 4 блока называются так. Это студия, это технический блок, это гуманитарный блок и это блок навыки. Почему такие и что там в них происходит? Очень быстро. Что касается технического блока, хочешь сказать?
Ну, наверное, очень важно, что он выстраивается на том, что любые такие лекционные или теоретические знания тут же абсорбируются благодаря такому эмпирическому ручному труду, таким переживаниям совершенно материального характера, такого эмпирического, да. На этом самом мы как бы усиливаем логику этих теоретических знаний, да, через такой личный, можно так сказать, опыт, и она выстраивается от понимания ресурсов как таковых и их трансформации в архитектуру, и как бы и мотивы, да, благодаря которым происходит, собственно, хорошая архитектура, как бы мы разбираем ее анатомию, ее физиологию в том числе.
Ну, другими словами, можно сказать, настоящие материалы. Студенты в подвале, где сейчас очень холодно, там очень много машин, очень много материала. Вот эти столы, части выставки были сделаны. Очень много элементов разных во время учебы было сделано руками, чтобы понимать, с чего это все состоит. Архитектура ведь это, тоже материал. Второй — это гуманитарный блок. Я бы сказал очень коротко, что гуманитарный блок учит студентов думать и задавать вопросы постоянно. Почему так? Почему именно мы это делаем? Не только создавать формы, а именно задумываться. В самом начале то, что студенты уже прошли, это большой блок, основан на антропологии, где главным заданием было научить студентов наблюдать, смотреть то, что происходит вокруг. Ну и мне кажется, что этот гуманитарный блок идеально выполняет эту роль. Куратором блока является Лоренс, который тут сидит, куратором технического блока Олег, куратором блока навыки Саша Никитенко, который, не знаю, не вижу тут, наверное, и тут нет. Перейду к блоку навыки. Навыки — это навыки. Это все от ручного рисунка, чертежа, скетча, через макеты, и потом все компьютерные навыки, это иллюстратор, это Photoshop, InDesign, Rhino, BIM, все, что нужно. Я немножко скажу про навыки, что мы тут выстроили такую интересную, вчера, скажем, показывал такую интересную схему. Практически каждый компьютерный навык начинается с того, как это выглядит, скажем, в аналоговой реальности. Если мы говорим про Photoshop, то начинаем с коллажа. Если мы говорим про Rhino, визуального, то начинаем с чертежа, начинаем с начертательной геометрии. Если говорим про BIM, то начинаем с того, как выглядит стена. Сначала спуститься в подвал, построить вот этот кусок стены, только потом перерисовать в BIM и пользоваться в своих проектах. И последний блок — это студия, и на самом деле тут определение очень короткое: научиться проектировать, научиться собирать вот этот весь опыт из этих всех блоков и научиться это воплощать в какие-то реальный проект. И как это происходит? Это происходит так, что у каждого блока есть свой куратор, у каждого блока есть своя программа, и потом несколько раз в семестре, можно сказать, каждый месяц происходит ревью. На этом ревью встречаются тьюторы всех этих блоков и обсуждают вот эти проекты, их промежуточную форму, добавляя свой опыт. Конструктор говорит: ну вот это не годится. Борис, который ведет гуманитарный блок, задает очень много вопросов, почему это так. Люди, которые ведут блок навыки, задают вопросы: а почему это так сделано? Это же можно было гораздо лучше сделать или проще и так далее. Я думаю, что структура семестра у нас чуть-чуть отличается от такой привычной, потому что проектирование, оно находится тут в центре. Раньше находится исследование или создание брифа, или переписание брифа, ТЗ. Это по-разному будет в разных проектах выглядеть. И мне кажется, что такая структура, которая состоит из этих двух блоков, она очень часто присутствует. Но мы добавили еще третий блок — рефлексия, где вот студенты прошли вот это все, посмотрели, и потом как бы смотрят на все это еще раз, получают еще одно большое задание. В первом семестре это было портфолио, которое нужно было создать книжку, еще раз посмотреть, написать тексты про эти все проекты, еще раз сделать компонировку вот всех панелей. Во втором семестре это выставка. И мне кажется, что такая структура, она позволяет как бы сделать вот еще одну итерацию именно этого мышления, посмотреть на все, найти какие-то наиболее интересные вещи. С моей точки зрения, вот эта структура довольно хорошо сработала. И так это выглядит вот уже не как такая презентационная схема, а так это выглядит в реальности, что у нас есть действительно вот эти недели, примерно 3-4 недели на каждый блок. И тут появляется еще одна интересная вещь. Мы это называем вертикальная студия. Мы в некоторых местах делаем воркшопы. Тут, например, группа Централа, которая тут сидит в зале, делает у нас воркшоп в каждом семестре про природу. Вертикальная студия означает, что студенты разных годов, первого, второго, потом, надеюсь, третьего, будут работать вместе. И это осенний семестр, осенний семестр, а в летнем семестре этой вертикальной студии гораздо больше, потому что надеемся, что этот проект «Выставка», в котором мы сейчас находимся, будет делаться не только как бы первым годом или вторым, а всеми вместе она будет гораздо больше.
И очень важная такая часть структуры образовательного каркаса — это вот мы называем их вечеринки, да, то есть это постоянные события такого, часто даже публичной презентации, каких-то промежуточных форм, или же и еще у нас существует вторая сетка, которая тоже имеет ритмику, это field trips или какие-то самые разные экскурсии, какие-то путешествия, какой-то выход в поле, да.
Да, это правда. Каждый блок может организовать свои путешествия, экскурсии, они появляются где-то тут, но я их не нанес на эту структуру. Ну и как бы уже сами семестры. Я очень быстро расскажу, чтобы не входить в детали, но какая-то концепция за каждым семестром стоит и за всей структурой. В самом начале мы назвали этот первый семестр «Контекст». И смысл в том, чтобы именно посмотреть контекст, научиться смотреть, наблюдать, понимать, что там происходит. И мы даем в этом первом семестре, на самом деле, довольно много инструментов разных. Это не только, это, конечно, рисунок, скетч, вот такие типичные инструменты архитектуры, но тоже фотография. В следующей итерации первого семестра ее будет еще больше. Это тоже некоторые антропологические инструменты, журналистские инструменты. Целью вот этого первого семестра является научиться именно уважать существующий контекст, не только материальный, а тоже социальный, нематериальный контекст. Второй семестр — это жилье. Этот семестр тоже у нас уже прошел. Это был проект небольшого дома в существующем районе. И все студенты вписались, это можно посмотреть в конце выставки с другой стороны зала, вписались в существующую ткань, добавили что-то, старались как-то интерпретировать. Этот проект тоже уже пришел к своему логическому завершению. Мы сейчас вот здесь. Третий семестр, который мы начнем осенью, он про публичные здания, и мы начнем с проекта школы, небольшой школы. Мы надеемся, что это будет проект, который покажет именно, как публичное здание может влиять на район, как можно перестроить существующую структуру так, чтобы она еще раз могла быть полезной, как можно создать какой-то центр из публичного здания и так далее. Четвертый семестр — это опять жилище, опять жилье, только в четвертом семестре мы хотим это сделать уже большим жильем, многоквартирным. Вчера как раз общались, скорее всего, этот проект пойдет в сторону какого-то критического переосмысления существующих сил, которые стоят за жильем, может быть норм, может быть финансов. Мы это еще договариваем, но это точно будет проект многоквартирного жилья. Пятый семестр — это, мы его называем пока грид, сетка. Смысл в том, чтобы спроектировать кусок города целиком, чтобы это не были раздельные элементы. Вот каждый студент делает один дом, а чтобы это было что-то вместе сделано, вместе придуманная сетка, вместе придуманная логика, вместе придуманный смысл, и этот смысл наполненными зданиями, которые там действительно нужны. Ну и после этого мы уже медленно идем в сторону дипломного проекта. И тут я закончу, передам слово Олегу, программа MA.
Ну, прежде всего, как бы несколько условий, наверное, связанные с нашим временем, как бы глобальным временем, не только каким-то украинским контекстом, повлияли на эту задачу. Да, мы живем в таком невероятно транзитном состоянии профессии, самой миссии архитектора, вообще всех задач, и она меняется, все об этом говорят, но она меняется гораздо быстрее, может быть, чем мы себе даже иногда успеваем фиксировать. И, собственно, мы взялись какой-то, можно сказать, частью команды, которая уже вовлечена в проект. И хотелось бы еще показать троих коллег. Это Лена Чернышова, которая директор X-Lab, Фулька Треферс, который и Николас Мур, оба вот, джентльмена, урбанисты и имеют и опыт равный в архитектуре, и в градостроительстве, как бы и в разных масштабах, и многие связаны как раз с тьюторингом, как раз концептуальным выстраиванием и были многократно подключены к образовательным процессам. И Елена является таким специалистом-концептологом в области мобильности. И это еще раз как бы подчеркивает нашу позицию, что мы рассматриваем архитектуру как, прежде всего, как среду, как большое сложное пространство, которое как бы состоит из совершенно, скажем, очень различно по природе, и мы объединяем как бы архитектуру в таком, будем рассматривать рассматривать в гораздо более широком как бы спектре. Да? Если говорить концептуально, как устроена вся как бы вот образовательная система в магистратуре, она всегда подчинена, и как бы тема проекта, тема семестра, она как бы еще усиливается по сравнению с бакалавриатом, она становится, я бы сказал, такой еще более плотной. Да? При этом как бы все дисциплины, о которых я потом скажу, они как бы существуют вроде как отдельно, но раскрываются и наполняются за счет этой темы. Как бы они реагируют собственно, на нее. И надо сказать, что сама структура дисциплин, которые мы выделяем о том, что у нас будет прикладные исследования как важная часть, отдельная дисциплина и отдельный модуль, да. Потом будет такой технологии, в которых будут связаны как бы и цифровые, и строительные, и проектные, и исследовательские, они все будут как бы совокупны, как одна такая большая технологический инструментарий очень широкого. Потом то, что вот тут написано practice, это будет как раз практика и менеджмент, это будет введение в законы и в то же время в устройство того, как заниматься промоушеном и маркетингом архитектурного офиса, как структурировать архитектурную команду и как бы очень многое по такой бизнес-организации самого проектного процесса, взаимодействия с клиентами, с властями и так далее, более широкого контекста. И архитектурный блок это будет такое интегрированное проектирование, и, собственно, интеграция связана с тем, что вот как раз этот совокупный продукт, который является проектом, он вбирает как раз все вот эти компоненты и все эти блоки. Это происходит как бы в образовательном процессе бакалавриата, но здесь это будет гораздо более усиленно, приблизительно как выглядит междисциплинарная команда в любом из каких-то проектов, который должен реализоваться. Да? То есть тут уже будет. И, наверное, очень важно сказать о том, что поскольку мы школа, как бы находящаяся не в центре какой-то известной метрополии, а на краю, да, то как эти знания доставляются, это очень разные формы, в том числе добавляется как бы в учебную практику и конференция, и очень много разного, и вот за счет этого происходит такое как бы разнообразие вот этих самых форм, да. И, наверное, это еще раз о том, что я сказал, вот это как раз вот это многообразие, которое как раз все время обслуживает вот этот проектный процесс, когда цель, она все время зафиксирована, она как бы видна, и как любое исследование, это всегда проверка самых разных доктрин, да, которые к этому ведут. Надо сказать, что еще раз о том, что вот как бы все наши образовательные программы — это достаточно большая команда, которая расширяется с каждым годом, и это какая-то такая самая разная какое-то влияние, которое от публичной программы, которое плавно переходит в учебный процесс. И как раз вот в этом многообразии опытов, школ, людей, вот мы выстраиваем эту как раз нашу образовательную парадигму, да, о том, что отчасти школа все больше и больше становится таким хабом, в которых как бы каждый находит свое место как со стороны как бы студентов, так и со стороны, я бы так сказал, уже состоявшихся архитекторов, теоретиков и преподавателей. Ну, приблизительно это то, что мы как раз, последний наш слайд, как раз то, о чем мы хотели вкратце рассказать, потому что еще, конечно, очень много подробностей остались за рамками этой презентации, но мы с удовольствием ответим на вопросы. Наверняка они у вас есть.
I have two immediate questions. Maybe the rest can go into the conversation later. The first one is, how do you structure the credits or time or weight between the 4 blocks? in the UK, the RIBA determined the design is 50%, and the rest of we have a similar structure with design, communication, technology, and what's the last one? Context. Yeah. The second question is, how do you work in the licensure or registration process?
Yeah, two things. We have like a most progressive Ministry of Education worldwide, because they absolutely open for, I don't know, some kind of new experience. It was not big discussion. Okay, we showed some structure and, I don't know, some reasons, explain all the reasons and fill all these formal forms. But also we thinking about validation in RIBA too, and also all these learning outcomes we keeping in mind, and all this our structure to reflect for this kind of order, I could say. But its idea is that we have like a quite fixed agenda. I mean, in each discipline have, I don't know, some kind of credits and plan how to deliver a particular knowledges or touching, I don't know, some fields of knowledges, but it's very much flexible how they involved inside of a design, integrated design process. This is always a nightmare for program director, because we designed each semester special for particular semester, because we have client in behind of that. This is always different kind of challenges, stakeholders, and different ambitions, and I don't know, scales, and this is we have to cover at that. But also we like for example, this is non-designing discipline have like a in body of studio of project particular, I don't know, part that could be also deeply involved in project, but have some credits too. And we'll try, we'll tell you maybe how it works exactly.
We have less design. We have, I think by time is more or less 40% of time. By ECTS is 10 points for the design and 6 points for each of the other blocks. So it's not half. But the thing is that the structure that I showed you is very schematic. The truth is that there are very many hours of other blocks that service the design block. For example, hours of the skills block where they are learning how to make a model, it's always a model that you need for the design block. So I would say that paradoxically we have much more of the design than half, but it's let's say bureaucratically it's less.
We have two ways. It's after BA you have to get 5 years experience and possible to get a license, and second option after MA, after 2 years of practice you could apply for an examinate in this board. It's like a full license of architect.
I'm just curious to know how the exams happen, like if for each block the students have an exam during the entire year, or if they have exams at the end of the year. How is the examination occur?
It's different. I mean, for the studio, of course, the exam is the project that is being defended. We are actually experimenting with the defense mechanism or defense formats. So, for example, yesterday you saw a presentation without a defense because we were just shown the exhibition. The defense was in the end of April. The next fall, we want to completely turn it upside down because we don't want to have the defense of the project at the end of each month, but at the beginning. So there is a let's say the party, as Oleg calls it, or defense somewhere in the center of the semester that happens on Monday, and it's the beginning of the next phase of design. So this is the studio. As for the humanities, the exam was, I was talking about it yesterday, I think. It was a conference, and it was repeated in a different format now. So it's been, let's say, an experiment with the format. As for the skills block, as I understand, they simply had to get the right amount of points for each of them. And for the technical block, Oleg is the...
It's like some kind of result of workshops and like some kind of explanation and also testing. And yeah, it's also like a little bit more like a discussion or I don't know, process. And
so it looks like we have one exam. But we always pay a lot of attention to the moment of closure of each workshop or each semester, and there is always something designed, and I think that this year we had the exhibition. We are going to follow this path, but in a completely different format the next year. We are going to make the exhibition actually build up throughout the year. So in every of these parties, the yellow elements that I showed you in the diagram, there will be some part of the knowledge for the exhibition created, and the final result will be a build up of this. So I would say we pay attention to the closure of each of the elements, but we don't even use very often the word exam. We always try to figure out something else.
У вас есть какое-то измерение этого результата, оценка или какой метод оценивания или подход?
Это очень сложно. Там математическая формула. Это математическая формула, но в целом нужна высшая математика, чтобы ее понять. Но общее правило такое, что есть некие технические вещи, которые должны случиться, быть на занятиях, приходить вовремя, сдать все вовремя, тоже как бы сдать все вещи в архив, чтобы они как бы появились в архиве и так далее. Это какие-то технические элементы. А потом есть тоже оценка уже результата по критериям, которые озвучиваются в начале года.
Планируете где-то еще, кроме Харькова, распространять школу, развиваться в других городах?
Наверное, мы распространились уже в Киеве нулевым подготовительными курсами, и, наверное, мы будем думать о том, как создать еще такие курсы. На примете есть Днепро и Одесса, да. Наверное, мы сейчас очень работаем над международной мобильностью, и со временем, скорее всего, наши студенты будут как бы перемещаться по миру. Мы все делаем для этого, и в то же время мы очень много гостей собираемся принимать здесь, как бы в учебном процессе. Это вот, если говорить о таком разрастании, оно, пожалуй, сюда направлено. Но очень важно, что институция — это все-таки это такой монастырь, в котором очень важна вот эта вся химия, которая происходит, ее очень сложно распространять и как-то так делать какие-то копии и так далее. Всегда это связано с местом, с людьми, с каким-то процессом, с историей, с временем. И мы строим ее здесь.
Спасибо, Олег и Куба. Мы им забыли поаплодировать.